Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first live stream of summer of 2024 here on Explorers Life. I'm Nate, got Steph right over there, right next to me. We're on two screens, but we're in the same room. We're like 6 feet away from each other. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this morning. We're doing this instead of a video this Sunday, instead of our weekly Sunday video. We just get so many questions that are really, really good questions. And they sort of warrant more context and more explanation than what we can give whenever we're responding to YouTube comments and stuff like that. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of do that, get on camera, answer some of these questions, have a little bit of back and forth, and see if we can answer some of those questions. So thanks for tuning in. Steph, do you have anything before we get going?
I just want to say good morning and welcome, everybody. Thanks for putting in the questions already. We've got quite a few questions already rolling in, so we're probably going to jump right into them, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say so too. Probably be streaming for about 2 hours or so till 11 our time, and then I'm going to go have lunch. But, before we get into the actual questions, go ahead and ask whatever questions you've got. And Steph, and we've got the whole team here in the chat section of this stream. We've got the entire Explorers Life team in the chat, and so maybe everybody can say hi. And so I've got everybody everybody's got the nice looking thumbnails, and everybody's labeled with Explorers Life on there. So whole team's here, installation team. Grace is here from media, Chad from the warehouse. I think Nicholas is in here as well. So everybody, the whole team. So before we get started, I think the thing that I want to talk about and address before we get to questions is recently we've been having a lot of questions about, highly specific questions about like, hey, Nate, I see your video and I like the way you do that, but I want to do it just a little bit differently. Can I do that? And the thing with that is, you can do whatever you want. And the thing is with our videos, we share and we teach what we've tested and what we know. And there's 1,000 different ways to do pretty much everything. And so if you have a thing that you want to try and test, give it a shot. That's how I learn. I try things. I've made sparks. I've melted things. Be careful, but try things, especially with stuff like 12 volt, like smaller lights, like lighting circuits and stuff like that. The other day we had a question. A guy was he had a Sprinter, and he was wanting to put 3 switches and 2 dimmers on the same circuit. And I don't think putting 2 dimmers on the same circuit works, but I've also never tried it. And 3 switches, I think you could make it work, but I've never tried it. So that's one of those things, just bench test this stuff. Try it out. Take what we've taught you on this channel and then apply it. Learn something new. Okay, let's get into it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think let's just start with our very first question. Morgan already started answering that one, but Glenn asked, what is the total cost of an electrical system, including your professional installation? Morgan is our installation manager there, and she kind of summarized that a little bit. And so, obviously we have a range of prices. So our smallest system is going to be around $9,500 installed. Our largest system is about $26,000 installed. And then our most popular option is about $13,000 installed. And that includes all of the parts, the batteries, everything.
Yeah. It's just such a broad range depending on what you want. It's sort of like asking how much does a car cost? It's like you got Honda Civics, but then you've also got, everything else that's more expensive than a Honda Civic.
Yeah, I realized as I was saying that I said our largest system is $26,000, but that's our largest pre-designed system. I guess we've also got off-grid cabin type stuff that could go upwards of a lot. Oh
yeah, we have huge systems, depending on what your needs are. But yeah, I would say that your middle of the road system, that's our most popular system, is 400 to 600 amp hours at 12 volts, 3 kVA of inverting capacity, 600 to 800-ish watts of solar with alternator charging, 12 volt load output. The same systems that you see on this channel all the time. So those are our most popular systems, and those are the ones that are kind of in that $13,000 range installed. So a little less not installed. So.
Yep. And if you're interested in getting a more specific quote, you can fill out a installation request deposit on our shop at shop.explorers.life under services.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next question.
Awesome. We actually have 2 people asking the same question. So is there a way to use the existing 7-pin trailer harness to send power from the vehicle to the Orion XS in the DC to DC charger retrofit?
Yeah. So, the context here, 7-pin connector on the back of, any truck or van on the road pulling a camper. That 7-pin connector is from the factory charging the trailer batteries just a little bit, in addition to, powering the lights and the trailer brakes and stuff like that. And the question there is, can you use that 7-pin connector to send power to the new Orion XS 50 amp DC to DC charger? And the answer is no, not really. 50 that Orion XS is a 50 amp charger, which is a lot of power, and the wire going into a 7-pin connector, the big power wire, is only like 10 gauge wire. And so it's really undersized for what it is. Now, depending on the insulation rating of the wire, it could maybe potentially, I don't recall what the max amps of 10 gauge wire is, but you're going to have a lot of voltage drop, and you're not going to get the kind of performance out of that expensive piece of equipment that you're needing to. So that's why our wiring kits include 4 gauge wire for the connection that's coming from the starter battery all the way back to the trailer battery. And we can just, we can sell you some Anderson connectors. So you mount right next to the hitch. So you just have that 7-pin connector, and then your Anderson connector is right at the hitch. And last year, we released a bunch of videos on OEM RVs, and go take a look at those. There's a couple playlists. Maybe Grace can link to the playlist for our RV retrofit system, those tutorials that we put out last year, and then maybe Steph can link the parts list or the part for the Orion XS wiring kit. That way you can kind of see what is involved and what parts are necessary and wire sizes and those Anderson connectors as well. So yeah, good question. That's a great question. But yeah, unfortunately, no, you really can't. You kind of can't do that.
All right, next question is, what's the most common type of install with respect to battery bank voltage, 12 volt, 24 volt, or 48 volt? And this is a question that we get quite often, so I'm actually glad to answer this. That's
true. Maybe we can be pushing people to this live stream to hear our thoughts on it. Yeah, so by far, with a historical focus in mobile applications like campers and vans, a 12 volt system is by far and large the most popular system that we sell and that we recommend. You have the biggest flexibility on solar array design configurations. You have the option to use the new Orion 12-1250 DC to DC charger, and that's not available in a 24 volt version at this point. The only time I really recommend a 24 volt system in a mobile application is if you need more than 3,000 watts of inverting capacity. So from 3,000 watts to, if you need 5,000 watts of inverting capacity, you have to step it up to 24 volt. Now, if you need more than that, you've got a big fifth wheel with 50 amp shore power, and you're wanting to do 2 5,000 watt inverters, that's where you're going to get into the 48 volt range. And I think we definitely have systems available for all of those at shop.explorers.life. The 48 volt for dual Quattro 5Ks, so the huge system, the big system, I don't know that that's publicly available, just because it's kind of a complex system, and I'd rather people email in, and so we can kind of talk about it first. That way you don't go down a bad path before we talk about it. But yeah, by far, that's the thing. A lot of people will come to us and say, "Hey, Nate, I want to install a 48 volt system. What kit do you have?" And it's like, well, that's kind of a weird question to focus on the battery bank voltage, before you focus on anything else. That's sort of like going to a car dealership with a pair of 40-inch, Super Swamper tires and being like, hey, I got these tires. What car is it going to fit? It's like, that's kind of backwards. I drive to and from work every day, 50 miles. I got these Super Swamper tires. What car do you have that'll
Super
fit?
Swamper?
Super Swamper. So it's kind of a backwards way to focus on the voltage of the system first. It's better to focus on the loads, the inverting capacity, maybe even the solar capacity a little bit to a degree. So if you actually go to our homepage, not the homepage of the blog, the homepage of the store, and you scroll down, so shop.explorers.life, scroll down to this. I've made this little system picker that kind of walk you through a couple questions. Pretty straightforward questions for the most part, inverter size, 50 amp shore power size, or whatever the case is. And then it'll give you an actual recommendation of the, battery bank voltage you should have in your system. So I think that, does that explain that?
I think so. I was only half listening because I was organizing questions.
trying to wrangle questions.
Yeah. Okay. Are we good on that one?
I think so for now.
Okay. I am going to jump to a few of the Orion XS questions or alternator charging questions in general. So those of you that had questions before that, don't worry, I'm not skipping yours, or I am skipping yours for right now, but we'll come back, I promise. But a bunch of these are relating to the Orion XS. So let's see. This first one recently replaced the 121230 with the Orion XS 121250. Really appreciating the smaller size and cooler operation, but I'm a bit confused about the configuration to allow the XS to synchronize with the MPPT.
So this was a firmware update that happened after I tested the Orion XS in the last go around. So I'm speaking sort of without testing things, which I kind of hate doing. The Orion XS should be able to synchronize with the smart solar charge controllers via the VE smart network. So just like you would connect to two smart solar charge controllers together, you go into your settings, you go down to create VE smart network on one of them, and then on the next one you go to join VE Smart Network on the second charge controller. And then, on your Orion XS, you do the same thing. You go down, you say connect Orion XS to VE Smart Network. And it should synchronize, perfectly. Given that the firmware updates are fully rolled out. I know that Victron, they've kind of gone back and forth on the firmware updates. They rolled a firmware update. Yeah, they actually rolled a firmware update out. And then I guess they rolled it back. And so I was trying to tell somebody to go look for something. And they're like, yeah, this is what I'm seeing. I'm like, oh. And then I went out to our van because I was like, no, it's definitely there. And it wasn't there. Oh, no, I updated it. I updated our firmware to the latest version and it went away. So I was like, oh, damn it. So that's how you would do it, given that the firmware updates are there. If anybody else has done that already and tested it, I plan on testing it, pretty soon once I start messing around with the Orion XS again. If you've tested it and you're in the chat, just let us know if it's actively working or not.
Cool. So still on the Orion XS, on a GMC Sierra, where do I attach the 4-gauge wires?
Yeah, so on your truck, last year whenever we did all the OEM RV electrical system retrofits, we showed sort of a couple different options for connecting underneath the hood. So I think Grace dropped that link previously. Grace, you may just have that link on the link to that playlist on standby, and you can just drop it every time I talk about it. But, that's just going to go to your starter battery, the starter battery positive and the starter battery negative. The fuse or the breaker, whichever fits best, is just going to go on that, the starter battery, positive battery terminal. So, yeah, check out that playlist that we made last year, installing these systems into tow behinds. And that should provide some pretty good insight on roughly how to do that.
Yep. Cool. Okay. And then also jumping back to some of the questions about 12 volt versus 24 versus 48 volt. Are you going to be putting together a secondary alternator kit, and specifically a 48 volt?
Maybe. We're kicking around the idea, and the hard part about that is we don't sell alternators, and like alternator manufacturers, they kind of keep, they kind of keep their alternators close to themselves. And so it's sort of hard for us to put together kits and stuff like that to a degree. I'm trying to find a nice way to put this. Whenever alternator manufacturers sort of aren't willing to cooperate with what we've got going on, it's sort of hard for us to sell those. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I mean,
because we tried
it's kind of a non-answer, but
yeah, it's kind of a non-answer because the full context of that is, we tried to get a secondary alternator to replace the factory secondary alternator on our Transit, 2 years ago whenever we were doing that build. And we sort of couldn't get the alternator manufacturer that we were trying to work with to cooperate and answer some of our questions. And, in full transparency, whenever we can't get a manufacturer to answer our questions, we sort of can't trust that manufacturer to answer y'all's questions.
Right.
If y'all run into issues, So basically, I would love to, but at the moment, it's just not a really high priority, and it's not super feasible at this moment. If you're an alternator manufacturer and you're watching and you want to work with us, let us know.
Cool. Okay, I think I'm going to jump back up to the going in order. Okay, so I've seen antioxidant joint compound used in wiring systems to enhance wire to connector continuity. I see you don't use this kind of product. Is there any reason why, and when is it not advantageous to use this?
Yeah, sure. We don't ever use it. That the antioxidation compound, that's realistically like more for whenever you're connecting, let's call it like dissimilar metals. You're connecting, copper wire to an aluminum lug, like in a residential breaker box or something like that. It doesn't really, correct me if I'm wrong if somebody's an expert in this particular area, but like, I don't think it does anything to like increase the like electrical conductivity of the metals. Whenever you crimp these lugs onto wires, if you cut one of those lugs in half, it basically is a solid chunk of copper. Like, it is a fantastic electrical connection, and a little bit of goop isn't going to like make it any better, like at all. So we don't ever use it. No, if you've got some other kind of deal, underneath the hood. Oh, that's the other part is, all of our kits, they come with adhesive lined heat shrink. So it makes a waterproof and, pretty much an airtight seal. So like air can't really even get into those connections and cause oxidation. You're going to have more oxidation on the like lug term on the bolt than you would like inside of the actual connection. So yeah, that's really not a concern with sort of what we've got going on.
Yeah. Cool. I believe Chad's already answered this one in the chat, but I'm upgrading my current solar charge controllers to 2 Victron 150-100s. What should I mount these on in a Class A motorhome? Plywood or aluminum metal? And Chad answered that as, he said, in all of our tutorials, we mount the components to 3/4 inch plywood, and also mention that the mounting hardware that's included in our kits is sized for 3/4 inch plywood. Next question is...
Actually, I want to add one thing to that, one
Okay.
quick thing. So on the plywood thing, because I think part of that question is about like fire safety and heat and stuff like that. Plywood, just regular plywood, not like necessarily chipboard or something like that, is like it's its flame point, like its point of auto ignition, like if you just heat it up without a source of flame, is somewhere north of like 500 degrees. If you have something that's getting to 500 degrees in your system, you have a lot of problems, and other stuff is definitely catching fire around it. So
yeah, for sure, all of your parts would be melted at that
oh
point.
yeah. There's lots of that's a catastrophic failure if something's getting to the point to where plywood's going to auto ignite. So I appreciate the questions that I get to use my actual degree in. So anything fire related.
Anything fire related, Nate really loves to talk about. So
I don't get to use my degree very often.
Okay, so trying to decide between running a 12 volt compressor, fridge, not the chest style in my camper, or adding an inverter and putting in a dorm style fridge from Home Depot. Thoughts?
Ooh, do you want to take this one?
Not really.
Get a 12 volt refrigerator. Like dorm refrigerators, they don't last very long. They're kind of like made to be cheap. They're less energy efficient than just a dedicated 12 volt or 24 volt fridge or whatever. Usually 12 volt fridge.
Also, they're probably not going to stay closed.
They're probably that's probably right. Yeah.
I thought that's why you wanted me to take that one, because I was going to gripe about them not staying closed.
Yeah. No, we've had a couple dorm fridges before, and it's like they never last very long. I think they have like a lifespan of like the average college, like dorm life kind of trajectory.
Yeah.
and add that into installing that into a vehicle that's going to be rumbling down the road. There's no way they last very long.
Trying to decide between an EcoFlow system and individual components. Your thoughts, please. And we get this question a lot.
Yeah, a lot. So, I'm not going to talk about, EcoFlow specifically, but I'm just going to lump everything into like the portable power unit realm. Jackery, EcoFlow, Goal Zero, all of those. There's literally 20 billion of them on the market. Literally.
Yes. Counted.
And I get emails from all of them every single day asking me to, hey, review our power station. It's like they're all the same. No, but anyway, I digress. So the portable power units like those, I think they're great. Like we have a little Jackery 500 that, we plop in the back of our Subaru Crosstrek for like little weekend car camping trips whenever, we're not like working from the road or anything like that. And if it runs out of power, it runs out of power. And if it powers something, great. And if it doesn't power something, that's fine too. We're not at like this at a loss if it doesn't function how we want. And honestly, I think it's great for that kind of stuff. But for a built-in system, I don't like portable power units just because they just don't have the quality and the flexibility that most people tend to want. We have so many people that are like, hey, I installed this portable power unit in here, but I kind of want faster alternator charging. Can I add this additional thing onto the side of the inline? And it's like, well, the whole point of like the portable power unit is so you don't have to add little things to the side of the inline in between the charging. So it's like if you're having to add things, it's like you may as well just like sort of get what you want from the start and go with components that have that flexibility. If you want 30 amp DC to DC charging versus 50 amp charging, you can do that. You want more solar, you can do that. You want less solar, you can size the charge controller appropriately and get a smaller charge controller. I think it's a difference between like a mobile home or a trailer house versus like a fully custom house. And mobile home's going to put a roof over your head just fine. Like going to be no problem with it if that's what you need. But if you want the flexibility, the quality, and everything like that, longer warranties, I think a system where you're building it from individual parts is always going to be the answer for a permanently built-in system. I'm going to get all kinds of hate from that. Like everybody hates my answer for that, but that's my answer. Yep. And I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay. I have a question about the smart shunt. What is the max amp hours of batteries you can have running through one shunt?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's kind of not a limit for that. You know, the Smart Shunt is rated for 500 amps, but that's like actual amps flowing through it at any given time, and not necessarily capacity. So I don't recall there being a limit on capacity. That would be a software thing, but I don't think there's a limit.
Do you recommend anyone in Denver or the Front Range that can tune my Victron chargers and inverter to all charge to the same parameters?
We don't have anybody in person in Denver proper. You know, our installers are located in Blue River, Oregon. They can travel to you, but wow, that would be an expensive service call to fly them out to Denver just to program a couple things. You know, we've made guides for programming for everything. So if you go to the blog, let's see here, let's pull that up. I'll show you where that is. So Explorist. Let me get it up first before I share my screen.
You didn't have Explorers Live pulled up already?
No, I didn't even have it pulled up. So if you go to just Explorers Life, not shop.explorers.life, but explorers.life, and go over here to resources and down to camper electrical guides. Nope. If you go down to electrical, I've moved it a time or two. And if you go down to electrical component programming and click on that, then we've got guides and cheat sheets and everything like that. That'll help you set all of that stuff up. So, you know, realistically, like you could email in, you know, if you're a customer of Explorers Life, and we'll send all this to you, but this is where all of those live. So those should get you pointed in the right directions. And if you are a customer of Explorers.life and you're having issues, you know, always you can hop over to shop.explorers.life/support, send an email, and we can send over the cheat sheets for what you're after.
Yeah, and if you do want just some additional hand-holding on that and someone to check it over virtually, we do have consultations, virtual consultations available.
True. All kinds of options for support.
All kinds of options, yeah. We don't want you to have to take your camper all the way to Oregon just to get a few settings changed. Yeah. I guess also on that note, we will be in Evergreen. I don't remember what the dates are. Nicholas, could you pull that up for us? We'll be in Evergreen for Adventure Van Expo. I think it's in July or August. And we will be doing free system checks there. So I guess if you want to wait that long, I don't think you really want to wait that long, but you could also just come see us and we'll fix it for you there.
Yeah, we could do it for you there. Yeah, Nicholas, if you'll drop the events page link in the chat, that would be super helpful. That way everybody can see where all we're going to be this summer for all that kind of stuff.
Yes. July 27th to 28th.
Perfect.
Nice. Cool. Okay. If all of the batteries are, if all of the batteries are 12 volt, is there any reason not to use AMG fuses?
I don't follow that question.
I don't either, actually, as now I'm reading it.
I would rephrase that question, drop it back in the comments, and we'll circle back around.
Perfect. Okay, I have a 12 volt system already set up, but now I want to install a 48 volt rooftop air conditioner. What should I do next? What you should do next is return your 48 volt rooftop air conditioner and buy a 12 volt one.
Yeah, you sort of got some parts and components that aren't going to match, and I mean you could fabricable them to work together, but like you've lost any benefit to having a 48 volt air conditioner if you're trying to power it from 12 volt batteries.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I'm laughing at this next one, actually. Okay, and I'm not putting names in here, so I don't remember who asked this question, but they said, I just bought a solar disconnect switch from you, but it is huge. I understand the NEC requires one for home installs. What does ABYC say in regards to disconnect switches for smaller mobile electric systems? Could you answer that question, and then I'll answer about it being huge.
Yeah. So I know you've got a solution for this anyway. But yeah, as far as what the ABYC says on, I don't recall off the top of my head what that code was. If I am referring to the NEC, it's usually because if I'm referring to the NEC, usually that's because the ABYC doesn't make a particular recommendation on it. So I usually go to the ABYC first. If they make a specific recommendation on it, then I'll cross-reference that with what the NEC says and make sure that the ABYC recommendation is at least that. But if the ABYC doesn't say anything about it, then I'll go back to the NEC and see if they say anything about it. And then if they don't say anything about it, it's just, best practices and kind of what what we've tested. So that was probably the decision-making factor back whenever we kind of started doing the dual pole disconnects. But, Steph?
We do have a new, smaller single pole disconnect that will be live on our shop probably sometime next week, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
It's this one. It's probably about half the size, maybe even less than half the size of the one that we currently sell in our shop. This one handles a single solar array, whereas the other one, the bigger one, handles a dual roof array.
The bigger one was in the ballpark of this big.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this isn't the actual one, but yeah. So this is this is the breakers that we used to have in all of our system designs, but we couldn't find a box that was this big back whenever we had these breakers in our system designs. So this one only handles one solar array. Oops, I just dropped things. This only handles one solar array, but that's what seems like most people have. It's a little bit harder to wire up inside of there, but it is
kind of little.
It is doable, but that's kind of the trade-off with a smaller thing. It does have a gland here, but I did this during testing. So this is what R&D looks like. You break things. So
Cool. Okay, and we got a clarification to that prior question about AMG fuses.
Oh, yeah.
If all of the batteries are 12 volt, is there any reason not to use an AMG fuse on the battery positive? I often see people say only use A&L fuses.
On the battery positive, we don't even use AMG fuses on the batteries. We use A&L fuses on off of the battery bank for fuses larger than 300 amps, so 400 amps and bigger basically. Any smaller, and we're using MRBF fuses.
Yeah, his question is why not use AMG fuse?
Just doesn't make sense. So the AMG fuses are, I think they're a max of, they would be a max of 400 amps. They've got I think they have a lower AIC. We made a video, Grace maybe can pull it up. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was last year, about how to size fuses or how to choose fuses. And we went over all of the AIC ratings of the various fuses, but I don't recall all of them off the top of their head. Usually whenever I'm designing a system, it's like I look at it, I check it, I make sure it works, I check the box, and then it immediately goes out of my head. So Class T fuses are going to be the best in between battery banks and the Lynx distributor, but those are slowly coming back into adequate supply on the marketplace, and we will have some soon. But they've realistically been out of stock worldwide for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Yes.
since COVID and that whole supply chain debacle. So, but for fuses 300 amps and smaller, MRBF fuses are great. They've got a pretty high AIC, and they just mount really nicely to the batteries.
Cool. Okay, Universe Unknown asked, I'm having a hard time understanding how to program a smart shunt for a starting battery. 4x12 in parallel. Do I convert CCA to amp hours?
That's a good question, but it's kind of a tough question because starting batteries aren't really designed to be used as storage battery banks for systems like these. they're designed to deliver a huge amount of power to an engine to start the battery. And then that's sort of it. So, I can't really answer that question because I don't know, because I've never really looked into it, because those batteries aren't really appropriate for, the house battery bank of an RV that's designed for storage and for, using a little less power at any given time. Because in a starting battery situation, you may have a quote unquote 100 amp hour battery, but it's delivering 350 amps to the starter. And in a house battery bank, an auxiliary battery bank situation, you're never going to pull 350 amps from a 100 amp hour battery. So yeah, basically that's a non-answer, but that's just not a situation we run into. You should probably look into getting, some kind of lithium battery or even AGM batteries. For that, something a little more appropriate.
Cool. I'm planning to install a DC air conditioning unit on an off-road trailer. Question: what do you recommend as the minimum battery capacity and solar wattage? I think Nicholas may have already answered this one in the chat, but go for it anyway.
For air conditioning, I'm saying 400 amp hours at 12 volts is the absolute bare minimum. Realistically, you're probably going to want the 600 amp hour range. If you're traveling, and a lot of that depends on where you're traveling.
I was going to say I left out the beginning of this because I didn't realize it was relevant, and it very much is. It says, howdy from Texas. So
if you're,
I think that's why Nicholas said 800 to 1200 amp hours of battery.
Yeah. If you're vacationing in Brownsville, I don't know why you would do
sorry.
that, but yeah, you're going to need 800 amp hours to 1200 amp hours, or and I would love to sell you as many batteries as you want to buy, but we also understand that that's sometimes not really realistic. So get as many batteries as your budget allows. Absolute bare minimum 400 amp hours. More realistically, 600 to 800 probably. And then above and beyond that, just keep a generator with you. There's nothing wrong. I want to be all electric just as much as anybody else, but a fuel burning generator, if I was having to vacation in South Texas, without a doubt, I'm using a fuel burning generator set out to the side to supplement, keeping the trailer below 110.
Cool.
And actually on that one, we have a video that came out probably 2.5 months ago. Maybe if Grace can link the video talking about air conditioner power consumption.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Follow-up question to the system battery voltage questions. You mentioned 24 volt systems made sense with a 3K inverter and a larger solar array, 1450 watts or above. Are there downsides to the 24 volt efficiencies?
No, not really. If you're doing a 3kVA inverter, but you're doing larger than 1450 watts of solar, then you have a ton of flexibility in solar. You have the problem where you run into issues with a 24 volt system with 200 watts of solar is that you realistically need your solar array voltage to be at least 20 volts higher than your battery bank charging voltage, for your Victron charge controllers to work at their maximum capacity, their most efficiency. And so with smaller systems, that gets really hard to do, and you get very limited on how many panels you can use and which panels you can use. And sometimes your which panels you use can't fulfill that, that threshold. So with a larger solar array system, bigger than 1450 watts, we're going to step that up to a 24 volt system. So you can put all those panels on one charge controller, and it's going to be much easier to design that solar array around that. So that's a kind of a rule of thumb. It's not a law, but that's sort of where our experience in designing these systems kind of comes into play.
Cool. To control a portable generator with a transfer switch option from the servo, do I need an external relay?
Usually not. So if you haven't yet, just Google search Servo GX generator start. So Servo GX generator start. And the Servo GX user manual has some fantastic documentation on how to get that to work. Because the Servo GX has a relay in it. Mm-hmm. Typically, you don't need an external relay, depending on which generator you have. But it's super user friendly. Like if you're like average mechanical aptitude, just check that out. And it's a really well written instruction manual. And Andy Rawls, who watches the Andy Rawls channel? Who remembers whenever I went to Texas and did collaboration with Andy Rawls on his Airstream? So
I barely remember it.
That was so long ago. So he reached out probably a couple months ago, and he was looking to add the Servo GX, he was looking to add an external generator to start his generator, A, remotely, and B, whenever and automatically whenever the batteries got low, because I think he's renting out his Airstream as an Airbnb. Not sponsored, I guess. But he wanted to do that. So we pointed him in the right direction and told him to check out those user manuals, and I haven't heard back from him. So I'm not really, I assume it worked. I think he would have reached out if it hadn't worked. So maybe I should follow up with him, see if it worked.
Maybe we should. That's a great idea. Okay, Universe Unknown had a follow-up question. I'm having 4 kilowatts of solar installed with 16 kilowatts lithium house battery. However, I need to know the state of charge of my starting battery remotely. And this is in regards to that previous question of the programming a smart shunt for a starting battery.
Yeah, so the smart shunt has. Does smart shunt have auxiliary battery input? The BMV 712 does.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the BMV 712. I was about to say yes.
Do you have a question that you can answer, and I can look that up real quick?
Oh, I was just going to say Chad.
Chad.
Chad, could you look that up for us? And we'll move on to the next question, which is, what's your opinion on flexible solar panels on camper vans? Do they heat up over the cabin or get too hot?
Yeah, I don't recommend flexible solar panels permanently mounted to anything. They get hot underneath them, and the more heat that is built up underneath the panel, the less power it's going to put out. And so that's a big negative. And if something goes wrong with the panel is right on the roof. And we had some of our friends that they had flexible panels, and they had a roof rack that just barely covered one of the panels, like probably like a roof rack that stuck over the panel, like probably like 2 inches or something like that. And so there was a cell that was chronically shaded. And so whenever a cell in a solar panel gets chronically shaded, first off, it's not going to put out as much power. But second off, it's going to have what's called reverse bias, and that cell is going to heat up. And over time, and it did, and over time, it burned a hole in their roof. And so it was like a dime-sized hole, just a big char. It never caught on fire, but it was black. It got hot.
Got real hot.
Yeah, so I think flexible solar panels are great if you want to like use them as like a ground deploy array, like a lightweight ground deploy array where you're, just kind of, some tent stakes and stuff like that, and or just plopping them out in the grass like that. I think it's fine for that. They also just don't have the lifespan for a permanently mounted solution. I think their warranties are only like 5 years, typically, where rigid solar panels are, like 20 to 25 years. So the length of warranty a manufacturer is willing to warranty something for really tells you a lot about the quality of the component.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Chad didn't respond to us, but David Robinson did and said that the Smart Shunt does have an auxiliary. Yeah,
so as far as like getting that set up, you just run a positive signal wire, like 16 gauge from the Smart Shunt, on that part, to the starter battery, and then set it up within the Victron Connect app. I typically don't bother with the starting battery voltage. I sort of don't really care what the starting battery voltage is most of the time, given that the car starts. I don't care what the starting battery voltage is. That's not a metric that I have, so I'm not really familiar with the setup of it. But I do know that the instruction manual covers how to set that up pretty well. So
Cool.
Sorry, I couldn't help further on that one. But.
Okay. I was surprised to see that the 4-aught cable, I was surprised to see the 4-aught cable with a paper sheathing between the insulation and the stranded wire when I cut into it. Not expecting that at all. What is the purpose of this?
So that's the 6'4" wire with like that cardboard papery kind of stuff. I have no idea why that's in there. I wish I knew. It's very strange.
Yeah, and it is very annoying. You're right.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. I'm sure there's some engineer that is like, this will get us an extra 0.0003 repeating, of course, amps out of this cable. I don't know why. That's just how they do it. And sometimes it's paper like that, and sometimes it's like this weird jute twine.
Yes. Oh, and that stuff's way worse because you can't just rip it off. You've got to cut it.
You got to cut it, and it's kind of messy. Yeah. And then sometimes it's like this like rubbery kind of like, it's almost like wire insulation, but just like a rope of it inside. It's very strange. I don't know why it's there. I'm sure it's there for a reason.
I'm sure there's a reason.
I don't have a clue.
Yeah. We always just rip it off.
Yeah.
Okay. I recently upgraded my solar charge controller to one that I purchased from you, a Victron 250-100. Any benefit to a single 1,000 watt series configuration versus series parallel 500 watts each?
Not really. Not at that size. If series works for the charge controller, if you're not going above on voltage, then I'm pretty much going to do that just because, your voltage is a little higher, which means that your panels are going to start charging, a little bit earlier in the day. It's going to keep producing power a little bit, later at night, not at night, but, after the sun kind of goes down and starts to set. If you, let's see your screen share. So if you actually go to shop.explorers.life, go up here to shop and then go to wiring kits and then go to solar array wiring kits. We have a lot of these wiring kits just sort of pre-designed, and you can kind of play around with your solar panel wattage, your battery bank voltage. And, if this was a, let's see, he was saying 500 in each. Do we have a 1,000 watt? Yeah, we do. So it'd be
1,000 watt. It would either be 200 watt panels or 250 watt panels. We have both options.
Oh, we do, don't we? Okay, yeah. So that's really good examples. Let's actually look at that very quickly for a second. Let me find the other one. 250, 250, 250. There we are. Let that load. We're really pushing our internet to the max today.
Yeah. And you're delayed on my screen, so I can't even help.
Yeah. Steph, can you share a link in chat if you can find that faster than I can? Because this is a really good example. I think this is worth bringing up.
You're looking for the 250 watt?
Yes. Oh, here it is. I found it.
Oh, nice.
Ha. So fast. Okay, yeah, so this is a really good example because this is the 150/70, but, the same concepts are going to apply. If you wired all 10 of these 100 watt panels in series, the chances of the voltage being too high for the 250/100 is pretty high. So that's why you see this wired in series parallel. It kind of gets us into a little bit of a smaller charge controller. With 4 250 watt panels, the voltage of this is only going to be in the, let's call it 110 volt range or so wired in series. And so you can do it in series. So, that question also depends a lot on, on what panels they are, how, what voltage the panels are, how many panels there are, and all that kind of stuff. So the answer is, yes, it matters, but, it depends on what your panel size is.
Cool. Alrighty.
Let's do one question and then take like a 3-minute break. I need a refill. My mouth is getting dry.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I'm adding a Victron 2000 watt inverter to a trailer and a Lynx distributor. In your video, I saw you ran heavier gauge wire from the Lynx to the battery bank and tied into the existing battery wire. I think this question actually got cut off, but it just says any overland issue.
Any overland issue. That phrase doesn't make that makes that question not make sense.
I thought that question was going somewhere totally different, and now I don't know what. I'm so sorry, but yeah, could you guys clarify that? Whoever.
Yeah, just repost it.
One. So let's do one other one.
Yeah, one mulligan.
Let me find one that's actually a really good one. Okay, what would you guess that my electrical consumption per day would be for one MaxAir 12 volt 75 quart Dometic fridge, gas cooking, and normal amounts of lights? How much extra would you estimate for 9 hours a day on Starlink? And I believe Morgan already responded to this one and posted the power audit. And that's what I would suggest that you do, is go through and actually put in all of your loads and how long they'll be on into the power audit. And that's going to give you a very, very good estimate, a lot better estimate than what we could do just sitting here calculating it in our heads. That's what I would recommend doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I could probably guess. I could probably say our Explore Lite kit is probably going to work for you. But in the spirit of education, check that power audit. Plug in those numbers. It's going to give you a lot better idea of how much power you can actually anticipate using, as well as sort of educate you on how power works, so that when you get your system up and running, you sort of know why things are killing your battery faster, and why you can run things and why you can't run things. So.
Also, I think this is a great plug for the last chapter of our academy. Mm-hmm. The chapter 2 of our academy was all about figuring out how much power each component takes, each circuit is taking, and how to figure out your entire system usage. So check out that playlist, Grace, if you could maybe pop a link to that playlist into the chat. I think that would be a great thing for you guys all to check out. We ended that whole chapter with a live stream showing you exactly how to run through the power audit. So check that out.
Okay, we're going to take a 3-minute break. 3 minutes. We will be right back, and we're going to keep on answering all these great questions. So if you have questions, just insert them, and team will put them into the queue, and we'll try to get to them all. We'll be right back. Sorry, where's my button? Oh, there it is. And we're back. Thanks for hanging back around. I don't think we lost too many people, but I feel much better now. Got me a drink. Good to go again. Okay, ready to jump back into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Perfect. So I wanted to talk about one of the questions that I just saw as I was sitting down was the Explorers Life Academy, if anybody had purchased it, if it was worth it, and stuff like that. And let me give a little bit of insight into what the Explorers Life Academy is. So, if you've been around for a while, obviously like free education is wildly important to us. And I don't feel good, as many times that people have asked like, hey, would you like do this, do more videos or special videos, like, if we paid you for it, if it was like behind a paywall and stuff like that. And what I don't like the idea of doing that. So I just want to share like, buying into the Explorers Life Academy, like what is that? And no, this is not a sales pitch. Just stick with me. So screen share here. So if you've been watching the channel for the last, basically the first half of this year, you've been seeing the Explorers Life Academy videos. And, if you go to, youtube.com/ExplorersLife, you go here to playlists. Here's the Explorers Life Mobile, Marine, and Off-Grid Electrical Academy. Click view full playlist. And then every video that we've released so far on the YouTube channel of the Academy is in here. Here's, the red ones right here. That's the first chapter. And then here's the next chapter. And then we've got those broken down into, electrical system sizing, the electrical system sizing playlist, and then the electrical terminology playlist. And so all that is here. It's available for free. You can watch it. You don't have to pay for it, anything like that. There's nothing special inside of the Explorers Life Academy. The thing that this does is inside of the Explorers Life Academy, we can structure it better. That's not something that we can do in YouTube and on the blog. So every academy, so we've got our Chapter 1 Electrical Terminology playlist. So we've got a playlist and a quiz, a playlist and a quiz, or a
video and a quiz.
A video and a quiz, video and a quiz. So it's the blog post with the video, and then the quiz follows. And same thing all the way here. System sizing, we didn't do quizzes, we had discussions. And so, there's no ads in here. We don't put ads in the middle of the blog post because we don't want to distract people like while they're trying to like read all of this stuff. There's pictures and everything like that, and there's no ads. There's no ads on the videos, and that's not something that we can sort of do on the YouTube and our blog side of things. We have to keep ads turned on the YouTube channel so that we can afford to keep making these videos for you. Same thing in the blog. So the blog has ads, every other paragraph or whatever. And yeah, I know they're annoying, but I can't find another solution for it. This is the solution for that. If the ads bother you, buy into the Academy. It's like $100 lifetime access for now. It will be going up whenever we get more content in there. Currently, there's 2 chapters worth of content in here. Myself, Steph, and Grace shot chapter 3 day before yesterday. And that's going to be dripped out to the YouTube channel over the next 3 months or so. And then it's going to be in the Academy just as soon as we're done editing it, basically. We don't have to play the game of, every Sunday uploads inside of the Academy. Then you got a little teaser of like sort of the other, things that are in the Academy. So, that's the thing. It's like, is it worth it? It's like, I guess if you don't like ads, it's definitely worth it. If you don't mind sifting through ads, it might not be worth it. I don't know. It's just kind of up to you. But I hope that was kind of some transparency on like what it is. We're not trying to like gatekeep, knowledge and education. That's not what we're about.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say, right now, obviously there's only 2 chapters in the Academy right now. There's about to be a 3rd chapter. We've got, I don't remember how many chapters, a lot that are planned. And
there's 11.
There's 11 chapters. Once that is entirely built out, we'll probably be raising the price too. So right now it's $99 for a lifetime membership, and we'll probably be raising that once we get more content in there. So just kind of a Yeah, not trying to be a sales pitch, but a little bit of a plug there.
Yeah. If you get in now, then you have access to anything that we put in there and to that, going forward. Okay, let's get back into questions.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, we've got another one from Universe Unknown, and we appreciate you continuing to buy us coffee. Okay, so are you saying that there's no way for me to know? Whoa, my chat is jumping around. No way of me knowing if my starting battery is depleted when my rig is parked for weeks without me present.
You should be able to do that. The starter battery information should be able to feed into the BMV7 or the Smart Shunt. And then the Smart Shunt feeds that information to the Servo GX. The Servo GX can then feed that information to the VRM portal where, if you're not actively at your location or actively at your camper, then you can see that information. I don't ever hook that up because I just don't feel like that particular piece of information is useful to me. And so I can't really give you a quick tip right now. But I will say that the user manual for the Smart Shunt and or the Servo GX and or the Victron Connect app will point you in the right direction on that. If you've purchased your Smart Shunt through explorers.life, just shoot us a message at shop.explorers.life/support if you can't figure it out with those three methods, and then we can I can look into the user manual and see if I can get you pointed in the right direction there.
Yeah, we can troubleshoot a little bit more. I'm actually curious about this too, so I would love to know the answer.
Okay, perfect. We'll figure it out too.
Cool. Okay. I'm working on an old MSI highway bus that's 24 volt from the factory. It has 240 volt split phase mini split installed by the previous owner. What would be the recommended inverter/inverters for this application?
You're going to be looking at our Explore XX kit.
Yep.
So, Steph, somebody link into that?
I can link to it, sure.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the Explore XX kit. It's going to have dual multi-plus 3K inverter chargers. As it sits right now, it's charging from a 12 volt alternator. But we can figure out some solutions for you with your 24 volt alternator. It might not be worth, if you have a built-in generator, I would just use that for charging. If not, we could talk about alternator charging, but I suspect you're also putting mass amounts of solar on top of it. Whatever solar you can fit on top of a big vehicle like that is probably going to be more than you're going to be able to get from your alternator with the parts that are currently available. Once Victron comes out with the Orion 24 volt Orion XS or whatever they're going to call it, potentially later this year, that would probably be a good solution. But yeah, the Explore XX is what you're going to be after, because that can take in 50 amp shore power incoming, and it can put out 120 240 split phase power at a rate of 3 kVA per leg, so 6 kVA total.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Great. Can you talk about grounding points? Ford recommends using only their specific ground points in the Transit, but I remember you simply attached yours to the wall of your van.
Yeah. Yep, that's what I did.
Can you give some more context as to why?
The thing is, like the Ford contact points are really small, and we use ABYC standards for our grounding, which states that the chassis ground wire size can be no smaller than one size smaller than the smallest wire in the whole system. And so to connect a 1/0 wire lug or whatever that was to the factory grounding point, that's like a number 10 screw, like you'd have to use a series of washers and connections and stuff like that, and it's just, there's no way that makes sense, like that would work. And maybe this is a little old school of me, but a factory grounding point isn't any different realistically than just buffing off some of that paint, scraping off some of that paint, getting it down to the metal, and then making your own grounding point. Yeah, like I said, maybe that's a little old school of me, having, first truck was an 1992 Ford F-150, and you could sort of make a grounding point wherever you wanted to because the whole thing was metal. But yeah, that's kind of my viewpoint on that. You know, of all the systems that we've ever helped with and designed, we've never had issues with that. So use your best judgment on that, but that's kind of, yeah, the thought process behind it.
Cool. I think we may have already answered this, so I'm sorry if this is a duplicate, but getting ready for a build, 24 volt runs more efficiently, correct? If I want to go with the 24 volt pneumatic AC unit, I'm going to want to set up a 24 volt battery bank, correct?
Yeah, if you were trying to use a 24 volt air conditioner, you would have to set up a 24 volt battery bank, which would sort of limit you on solar array, you know, options and sizes, as well as DC sizes or DC charging options. There's a pneumatic 12 volt version that would sort of give you more options on solar array design, as well as you could use the new Orion XS 121250. And as far as the very first phrase in that question with, you know, 24 volt is more efficient than 12 volt. That's not true. That's a
Common misconception.
Common misconception that gets spread around Facebook groups and the internet like wildfire.
Yeah. And I would clarify what Nate said about the alternator charging. That's because the Orion XS is only available in a 1212 application, not a 1224 application just yet. So there's no, there is the older Orion 122430 that is available in 24 volts. So that's where you're limiting your options on alternator charging. Okay, is there a reason that my BMV 712 rarely ever reads 14 volts even when nothing is on, yet a 100-watt solar panel is plugged in via the Victron MPPT, and the Victron app says battery state is 100%?
That's a settings issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what
So
I'd say.
yeah, there's something up with probably the charger. You probably don't have the charger set to charge to 14 volts, to 14 point whatever it needs to be. If it's battle-born batteries, that's 14.4 to 14.6. But the BMV is saying it's full because the BMV charged voltage is too low. You know, the BMV charged voltage should be 0.2 volts lower than the charged voltage of the the BMV charged voltage it has to be 0.2 volts lower than the charging voltage, the
Yes.
absorption charging voltage of all the chargers. Grace, would you link what video did we cover that in? That was VanFest last year. When we went to VanFest, everybody had the same problem. We could have done a group fix for that because
Yeah,
I think
every single system check we did was a settings issue.
Grace is going to link to the video we did for VanFest last year where we fixed some systems there, and that was explained a little bit more in depth in that particular one. So yeah, and also, you know, keep in mind the let's see here, for settings and stuff. If you cruise over to the blog and then cruise into resources, electrical component programming, we have all of our guides for programming there. Perfect.
Cool. Is it legal to mount batteries externally under a mobile home, like, for example, one based on a Ford Transit chassis? There seems to be plenty of space and ride height to do it safely.
Yeah, I think it's legal. As far as I know, I think there's a couple OEM like manufacturers who do that. I don't like the idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's, in terms of legality, sure, it's legal to do it.
Yeah, you know, if you've got a battery that's got a lifespan of like 10 to 15 years and you put it under the van, there's no way to it's a kind of a pain to check the lugs, make sure that nothing is kind of melting. You know, it's subject to additional heat and cold and road grime and all that kind of stuff. Their batteries are expensive, and so like, putting them in an area where they're subject to that sort of like abuse, I don't love that idea, but
Yeah.
it's also not my camper, I guess.
Let's see. I am adding a solar panel to my system that I installed on my RV a year and a half ago. I had the panel, but I didn't install it. It's wired in series. Should I add the panel at the end, or does it matter? So existing solar panels are wired in series.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you wire the panel into the array. As far as in terms of like age and stuff like that, that doesn't matter. I think is that how you're interpreting that question?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that doesn't matter.
Cool. I believe Nicholas already answered this question in the chat, so I'm going to mark that one off. My battery bank is 12 volt, 1080 amp hours for Battleborn GC3s, paired with a Multiplus 3K. What should my max charge amp setting be? I've seen conflicting guidance: 80 versus 100. 80 versus 120 amps.
You can turn that all the way up, 120.
Yes.
Because, your GC3s, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but they can charge somewhere in the ballpark of 150 amps each. And so 4 of those, you can realistically charge those at, that's like 600 amps. So there's no problem charging that. That size of big battery bank at 120 amps. So, yeah.
Cool. I just bought part of the base kit for my 30 amp RV. I know you don't support it, but could you talk about using old lead acids in your system, at least until I can afford $5,000 in Battleborn?
Yeah, I don't know. The thing with lead acids is, realistically, without severely decreasing their lifespan, you can only use them to 50%. And they're twice as heavy as lithium batteries. And so you sort of have to buy twice as many lead acid batteries as you actually need for actual consumption, compared to lithium batteries, which can realistically be drained to nearly zero without any kind of negative, longevity effects. So, as far as for charging rates and charging voltages and stuff like that, there's a bunch of those, the rates and stuff like that published in our programming guides. I just pulled up the screenshot for earlier. That would help there, but that's really it. Like, lead acid's fine. For storage, it's just, it comes with that, kind of weight penalty, and you have to buy twice as many as you actually need penalty, compared to lithium. If it were, obviously Battleborn's great and who we recommend and stuff like that. And, but if you weren't going with Battleborn, because I know they are, some of the pricier batteries on the market, if you're going with the option of lead acid versus a significantly less expensive lithium battery, I would go that direction.
Yeah.
Like if those were your only 2 options, I think you're going to get a better system out of it. So.
Cool.
Perfect.
I would like to install a Multiplus 2 2K in my sailboat. While vertical orientation would be best, it would be, I think this is supposed to say it would be extremely difficult. Can I mount it sideways with the right side facing down?
Yeah, sure. Good question there. So Multipluses, they're supposed to be mounted vertically. That's how they're designed. But we also know that there's a lot of space considerations in smaller systems like boats and RVs and vans and everything like that. If you have to mount it, horizontally or whatever the case is, you might just have some overheating issues. So you might have to add some additional computer fans to the enclosure that you're in, or some vents that are, kind of blowing some air up through the multiplus. So just some additional venting, keeping it cool, and just kind of understand that it's like, if you have overheating issues, that's why. Just have to dial back your usage a little bit. So it's just kind of one of those trade-offs.
Cool. If I use a Lynx power in with a Lynx distributor, do I run the power from the batteries into the power in and then connect the distributor on the provided lugs where you connect them together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, instead of doing that, if you kind of follow the systems and diagrams that we have available, that takes that question out of the equation, because that's not how we recommend doing things. So if you go to shop.explorers.life and you go to shop and you go to electrical systems and you go to build your own electrical kit and choose whichever one of these use cases is most appropriate for you. And then I'm just going to click into our most popular size here, which is the Explorer size, and go into that, and it's going to load eventually. And then, so these, our battery bank systems, or our battery bank wiring kits, are designed to wire the batteries in a really particular way, and that's like this. So all the positives together, all the negatives together, and then the positives and negatives come off of that, and then they go to the Lynx distributor through a switch, through a shunt, and then we're golden. Nice and easy. All of our tutorials that we've ever published on Explorers Life YouTube channel are wired like that, so go check those out, and those will get you pointed in the right direction on how to wire all this stuff together.
Cool. I am building out a ProMaster. Some unforeseen misjudgments on comfort regarding the front passenger bench has me redesigning pretty much the entire layout. My new layout has most of the electrical components residing under a Dometic refrigerator that sits counter height inside an 80/20 rack. The batteries will live in a separate space. Is this a terrible idea?
Could you summarize that for me?
Yeah, so the electrical components are under a Dometic refrigerator. I'm really struggling today.
Words are hard.
It's Dometic that keeps getting me. Dometic, and I keep trying to say domestic.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
A Dometic refrigerator that sits counter height inside an 80/20 rack. The batteries will live in a separate space. As far as the rack and everything, as long as everything is in there safely, I don't see any problem with that. I think the refrigerator sitting over that, I don't think that's a terrible idea. As far as the batteries living in a separate space, I think that would be my only concern with this whole question, as to how far away from the rest of the system are you mounting your batteries? And are all of your batteries going to be in the same space? So that's something we've seen a few times is, that people will try to mount one battery on one side of the van and one battery on the other side of the van, or the whole battery bank on the opposite side of the van from the rest of the system. And we definitely don't recommend either of those two options. I think just maybe some more context, but as long as all of the components are, close enough to each other, then I don't see any issue with that design, just from what you've given us on this, in this note.
Yeah, no, I think that's the big kicker, is just keep everything close together. For a little additional context, here, hang on just a second, I'm trying to pull something up.
And when we say close together, the furthest that we have, the battery bank from the rest of the system in any of our kits is 5 feet. So that's pretty much the maximum. That's the maximum that we sell wire for, and that's the maximum that we recommend.
Yeah, so like in all of our wiring kits, they're based off of diagrams and everything here. So you have the length of wire from the battery bank to the Lynx distributor. So this guy and this guy here, that's 5 feet. From the Lynx distributor to the multiplus, 5 feet. from the links distributor to the charge controller, 5 feet. So that's sort of like our rule of thumb on all of that stuff. That seems like it works, regardless of how like you do the math. Now you could shorten the wires up. Great, that's even better. The shorter the wire, the better. But realistically, like those 5 feet lengths are sort of how the math works out whenever you're doing all this stuff together. Yeah, good insight, Steph.
Cool. Any ideas how to troubleshoot a low battery alarm on a Victron 3K inverter? The alarm comes on when I turn on the 120 volt hot water heater with the 12 volt AC, while the 12 volt AC is running and the batteries are 90% plus full.
I think that could be like maybe one of two things. That could be maybe your batteries aren't actually 100% full or 90% full or whatever, almost full.
Yeah.
That could be a thing. And so your shunt and your batteries actually aren't on the same state of charge. That's an option. The other thing is you could have a loose connection. So one is a settings thing and the other one is a physical thing. So the physical thing with the loose connection, if you have a loose connection or if you have a poor quality fuse in line or there's a bad crimp or you've got a washer in between the lug and whatever connection point that you've got going on, all that will cause volt resistance and therefore voltage drop. And whenever the voltage drops, it's going to drop to a level that the shunt is going to think that the multiplus thinks that the batteries are low. So the batteries thinks the multiplus thinks the batteries are low because the voltage drops. It's not pulling that information from the smart shunt. So those are the two things I would check. I would make sure that your settings are all squared away, and make sure that the batteries are actually 90% whenever the shunt says it's 90%. And you can do that by making sure all the settings are good to go and then sending the whole system through a full recharge cycle. So connect to shore power for like 24 hours and that'll for sure get it. And then the other thing to do is just go through and make sure that there's no loose connections. Loose connections, heat shrink interfering with a connection, washers inside of the flow of power, any of those things that we've talked about on the channel.
Awesome. Can an older Battleborn 100 amp hour battery, a couple years old, be connected to new batteries, or should I just bite the bullet and replace that one too as I upgrade my system?
Battleborn actually makes some specific recommendations on this. I don't recall off the top of my head without looking it up how long they do that or how long they say it's okay to add a new battery to an old system. Mm-hmm. The number that's sticking out in my head is 3 years. I think they don't want you adding new batteries to batteries that are older than 3 years old. But check out their website, or if you Google Battleborn adding new batteries to old batteries, I think they have a blog post about it specifically. But if not, reach out to their tech support and they'll get you pointed in the right direction. Just shoot a quick email. That's a quick question that I know they know the answer to.
Yeah, and they're fantastic about answering all of those questions.
Yep.
Cool. So going back to the question with the system below the refrigerator was the other concern would be condensation from the fridge over the components. They said I would build a box around them, so I'm not too worried, but just wanting to add some context to that one.
Yeah, no, that's good context. And yeah, you definitely want to make sure that your components are staying nice and dry. And you also want to, as far as condensation goes, you want to make sure that that's got a way to evaporate and or drain out, depending on, usually you don't have to have an external drain for condensation on Dometic refrigerators. That's not really a thing unless something's going wrong. That's the only time you'll get some leaking. But yeah, definitely a good idea to put a little barrier between there. But good thinking though on the condensation though.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's something that a lot of people wouldn't think about.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't have thought about that just right off the bat.
What are your thoughts on a dual Victron inverter system for an RV in split phase and incorporating an auto transformer to balance the loads between the two inverters?
I think it's a great idea. I think that's kind of like a little bit of a above and beyond thing. I think that's a tough thing. Like, if you want to do that right off the bat. So additional context here, because we've never talked about auto transformers on this channel. And if you have two inverters and they're programmed to cooperate, for lack of better terms, and send their power to the breaker box, if you have two inverters, there's a chance that you could plug things in, run your air conditioner, and they're all being powered by one inverter, just depending on how those circuits are originating from the breaker box. I'm just oversimplifying this like crazy. But, and so that means you could potentially, overload one inverter while the other inverter isn't really doing anything, just because that other inverter, isn't powering that side, quote unquote, of the breaker box. And so adding an auto transformer in that just means that each inverter or both inverters are going into the auto transformer. And then that auto transformer is sort of like acting as this like traffic director, if you will, and making sure that the power of both units is going to the breaker box. And so you can sort of use as much power as you want on either leg of the system, L1 versus L2. And that auto transformer is just going to sort of like divvy up that power and send it to the breaker box appropriately. So I think it's a good idea. In practice, I don't know how useful it is or how many times that people run into problems with that. And I think honestly, the biggest limiting factor or deciding factor on not doing that is sort of like physical space. If this is in an RV, you're probably doing it in the pass-through and stuff like that. And so you're going to have two inverters, and an auto transformer is about, let's call it about the same size as the Multi-Plus 3K, for our purposes here. And so you're really starting to run out of room if you put a Lynx power in, and then a Lynx shunt, and then a Lynx distributor, and then a multi-plus, and then another multi-plus. Just that right there is like 80 inches wide. That's what's in the cargo trailer, our show trailer, that soon to be revealed. That's what's in there right now. And I couldn't fit. I kicked around the idea of putting that in there, but I couldn't fit it. It did not fit. So yeah, I think it's tough to tell. Off the start, if you have room for it and you want to just like future proof it and be like, hey, I don't want to like mess with this, like once I'm done with it, then probably go for it. But otherwise, it's probably fine without one.
Cool. Anything else on that?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Do you have a video on how to make the Victron system solar priority?
I don't have a video on that yet. That was one that we were kicking around the idea of doing last year. But we just never got around to it. We just got swamped.
Yeah.
Let's consider doing one on that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one.
Because my mom is coming to stay with us over the summer. The one we've got did the motorhome installation on, and she's bringing her motorhome in, and I'm putting shore power in our shop, and so maybe we'll reprogram her multi-plus to have solar priority. And then that way it's using solar, but then she doesn't have to do anything for shore to kick in. That's a good idea. Good idea.
That is a good idea.
Write it down.
Write it down. Somebody write it down. Okay. I'm planning on installing my DC to DC charger soon. Do you recommend using an ANL or MRBF fuse? Neither.
So if you go for installing the DC to DC charger, we recommend that you go to shop.explorers.life, and then you go to menu, and you go to wiring kits, and you go to component wiring kits. And if this is a system, like a from scratch system, I'm going to sort by latest because it's some of our newest kits. And then we'll wait for that to load.
I also just popped it into the chat, the direct link to the Orion 1250 wiring kit. That'd be for a new installation.
Yep.
Let's see.
And yeah, and then, depending on if you're wanting single or dual, we'll say just a single. We recommend using a MRBF fuse inside of your Lynx distributor, protecting the positive wire coming from the auxiliary battery bank.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, nice.
That's a mega fuse.
That's a mega fuse. Mega fuse inside of the Lynx distributor, protecting the positive wire coming from the Lynx distributor and the auxiliary battery side. And then on the starting battery side, there's a couple different options. You can do an MRBF fuse, like I just misspoke about, or you can do a resettable breaker right here, or you can do that's pretty much the only two options. MIDI fuse if you have a Sprinter and you're trying to attach to the bus bars underneath the seats. But that's the option. So yeah, mega fuse on the Lynx distributor side, and then resettable circuit breaker or MRBF fuse on the starting battery side, protecting that wire. So, and that's all included in the kit. And you can add the Orion and the overcurrent protection or the Anderson connectors as needed right there. Sweet.
Perfect. Let's see. I'm not wanting to charge from my tow vehicle, but would you recommend disconnecting the 12 volt from 7-pin when running lithium, or leave it as is?
I would leave it as is unless it causes problems. You may notice some just weird charging parameters coming across, or it's like your solar's like kind of working weird whenever your vehicle's on. So I usually recommend just leaving it as is, because I would say most of the time it doesn't, there's no conflicts. But you'll sort of notice conflicts, and they're not like catastrophic conflicts. They're like, my solar's not working whenever I'm driving, or whatever the case is. They're pretty small, programming kind of small metric problems. So yeah, I just leave it until you have problems.
Cool. Awesome. That's actually the end of our questions. We made it through everybody's questions.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, and thanks so much to our team who's been really crushing it, answering all of these questions and dropping all of the links as we've been chatting. So that's been super helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, let's kick the weekend off a little bit early, and we'll let you guys get back to your day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for dropping questions, and thanks to just spending your Friday morning with us. We plan on doing this every month going forward.
Don't hold us to that.
Yeah, don't hold us to that. Every month going forward, at least through the summer. I think I'd like to get through the summer on doing these the first Friday of every month. So first Friday of every month, we like to tune in and do these. So we'll try to answer your questions in the YouTube comments section underneath every appropriate video. But otherwise, just tune in on first Fridays and ask your questions here. Let's have some fun. Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody. We will see everybody next time. And I'm pulling up my end stream button that I can't find. All right. We'll see y'all later.